Good afternoon. My name is Councilmember Aurin Chowdhury. I represent the South Side and I am the Chair of Intergovernmental Relations. Today is January 30th, and this is the latest installment of the Metro Ice Out Report. We're joined by elected officials across government from the state, Hennepin County, the city, and we are regularly doing updates to our community to make sure that community members are aware of all the updates that are occurring during this ICE occupation and invasion. We're going to keep on doing this as long as we need to. Collectively, we are all saying ICE out immediately and ICE out of Minnesota. We also today are going to see the United States Senate take a vote on funding the Department of Homeland Security. Several elected officials, including both of our U.S. senators, Senator Tina Smith and Amy Klobuchar, have called for this funding not to be approved. So we will be waiting and seeing what happens with that today. The first person that will be giving an update today is Senator Scott Dibble. So I'll pass it on to him.
Thank you, Councilmember Chowdhury. Before I get into my update, of course, I think we should take notice of the fact that two journalists were arrested at the order of the Secretary of the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, Don Lemon, and Georgia Fort, in what appears to be a clear violation of the First Amendment right of the free press in our U.S. Constitution, Section 3 of the Minnesota Bill of Rights, calling the freedom of the press inviolate, as well as someone many of us know very well, Jamal Lundy, who used to work at the state legislature, works in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, was also arrested today in what appears to be a malicious and vindictive effort to prosecute these individuals in violation of their free speech rights and their freedom of assembly. So just wanted to make note of that. The update I'd like to give today has to do with a hearing that we held yesterday in the Minnesota Senate. It was the Senate Subcommittee on Federal Impacts. We call a select committee. This committee has been meeting for a number of months to examine the consequences of the actions being taken by the Trump administration on a number of fronts, including the denial of payment for SNAP and just numerous efforts to attack and engage in economic and legal retribution against the state of Minnesota. We were meeting for a number of months prior to this point to examine all of that, as well as impacts on healthcare settings, educational settings, et cetera. And then, of course, the invasion and occupation of ICE started happening a number of weeks ago, and so yesterday's hearing was focused on that. And we brought forward several dozen individuals to provide testimony, personal firsthand testimony, as well as legal and policy analysis, as well as those who represent organizations that are helping and assisting those who are being targeted and harmed. So I'll just read quickly a little summary, which will just give a taste of some of what we heard and was entered into the record yesterday. On the legal front, we heard from lawyers who detailed the constitutional violations and the attorney from the ACLU who called the surge one of the largest deprivations of constitutional protections in the history of our state. Even lawyers working on this every day do not know how many people have been taken into detention, where they are, whether they have legal status, or where they are going. Recently, federal judge Patrick Schiltz, a Bush appointee, said, and quoting from his own legal document, ICE has likely violated more court orders in January of 2026 than some federal agencies have violated in their entire existence. Chase Iron Eyes reported that 3 of the Oglala Sioux members who were detained weeks ago have still not been located. From the press, we heard from Laura Jadid, who's a freelance journalist who spoke about applying to work for ICE and being offered a job without even completing paperwork or background checks. She said, what is extremely disturbing is that there is apparently no accountability from the start of this process to the end. ICE does not know who is on these streets. We do not know if there are people with domestic violence felonies carrying guns in our community. And this, of course, is in the context of ICE bringing tens of thousands of individuals on board and shortening up the length of training that they undergo before they're deployed on the streets. From local government and from our schools, we heard from the mayors of Richfield and St. Louis Park, who testified about ICE and how they're negatively affecting their communities too. ICE's presence is leading to the underreporting of crimes and fear of calling 911 even in emergencies. We heard more about how attendance is down across the state because kids and parents are afraid to go to school. ICE is stalking bus stops, stopping children on their way to the classroom. An early childhood educator said they had to do more lockdowns in the last 3 weeks than her 27-year career. The actions of ICE have taken an unimaginable toll on the mental health and well-being of our students, teachers, staff, and their families. I also shared some stories from an administrator I know about some extremely alarming stories of targeting by ICE of the families and children of their school. On racial profiling, Garesh Muraldiharan, a visa holder picked up by ICE, told him he was here illegally and they were going to deport him. ICE said they were picking up people whose status was pending. He was denied a phone call and was in a cell with 50 other people for 2 nights. Tao Mi Zhang of the Coalition for Asian American Leaders spoke of profiling of the Asian community and the detention of refugees who fought for our country in the secret war. She pleaded with the committee and our federal government to stop treating her people like animals. With respect to the Whipple facility, Wesley Powers, a veteran who was detained by ICE, spoke of his experience inside Whipple and the horrific conditions, constitutional violations, lack of access to attorneys, and utter incompetence in the facility. Agents are going unchecked without concern for the safety of others, or even themselves with the opportunity to destroy evidence and avoid future consequences. I also wanted to mention, and I have a link in the chat, an article on this subject. We were visited from dozens of other state lawmakers yesterday. Joining us were over 50 lawmakers from 13 states in what they called the Day of Solidarity for Minnesota, and in fact, representing 27 states. A number of folks were not able to make the trip. About 500 lawmakers have signed on to a sign-on letter decrying this federal overreach, this threat from the federal government. They came to hear the stories of our communities to bring back to their states and to help build community networks and a coalition of states and leaders to stand up to ICE. A state senator from Montana said, "We need red states to see, even if we are not next, the federal government is breaking the law. It is defying the Constitution. No matter what is happening in your state, the federal government is treading on us." We are reminded that this is not where they plan to end this violence and intimidation. It is where they are beginning it. They will use Minnesota as a guide for how far they can go in other states. Because of this, we need to keep standing up and showing up for our neighbor. We are not just saying that ICE needs to leave Minnesota. We need this to end and to never begin again anywhere else. Thank you, Councilmember Chowdhury. That concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Senator Dibble, for those stories and reports from the ground. It's really, really harrowing, and I think just paints a really important picture of the moment that we still continue to be in. Next, we'll have Representative Michael Howard.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you for the chance to connect. I'm hoping today to share a little bit about stories that I'm hearing from my colleagues all across the state that highlight what we're seeing on the ground. And quite clearly what we're seeing is any notion of things de-escalating in our streets is not being seen by our community members. If anything, things are escalating in ways that continue to directly harm people and show why the only solution here is ICE needs to get out. I do also, before, want to highlight the dangerous news this morning of 2 journalists being arrested. This really is part of a clear authoritarian playbook to silence what we can all see with our own eyes. It's dangerous, and it should clearly be announced by anyone in any party who believes in the freedom of speech and the freedom of the press. Our Attorney General, Keith Ellison, put out a statement this morning, and I wanted to read one of his last sentences in that statement, which I think is really important. And he says, "Arresting the storytellers does not change the story. This dangerous, unlawful, unconstitutional surge must end. And I think it speaks to the intent of what we're seeing from the federal government to silence voices of opposition. And it speaks to how important it is that we all continue to raise our voice and call out what we see with our own eyes in the streets. I too want to echo the words of Senator Dibble that it was very powerful to see legislators from all across the country come to the Capitol yesterday to learn. And one thing that I took from it is, again, a source of pride for everything our communities are doing to respond. The legislators that I spoke with were so impressed by the level of community-driven responses and wanted to learn and ask questions and help prepare, because we know that Minnesota is really a testing ground for what Donald Trump wants to do next. And the lessons being learned and the community building that's happening in our state, just want to reiterate how powerful it is, not just here, but across the country, for us to make sure that not just Minnesotans, but Americans don't feel the oppression that our citizens are feeling. And so it just speaks to how important everything our communities are doing to respond are in this moment, and it's being noticed by people all across the country, all across the world. So to the heart of what I wanted to share, though, it's really important, I think, for all Minnesotans to understand what continues to happen in our communities. Greg Bavino might have lived in the last few days here. You know, we've heard federal officials talk about de-escalation or lowering the temperature, but have things de-escalated? I think anyone who's seeing what's playing out in our streets know that things haven't. And in a lot of ways, things have gotten worse and escalated in a few really important ways. One is that ICE continues to racially profile and lawlessly target people of color without warrants. A few examples of this: in the North Metro, two 16-year-old students on their way to school, Somali students, were pulled over and harassed. No warrant, no explanation. A pregnant Somali mother in the West Metro was followed to her prenatal appointment. She is a citizen. She now fears to go to her next appointment, and communities trying to figure out ways to make sure that she can get the medical care she needs in her home if she doesn't feel safe leaving her house. This isn't just targeting Minneapolis or the Metro, or even it's statewide. In Belle Plaine, Minnesota, ICE agents have repeatedly tried to gain access to a child care center, and they're going door to door in apartment buildings in Northfield. Those are the reports we're hearing. And agents continue to target schools and our kids. In the same school district where 5-year-old Liam, who we've all heard his story, 2 more students from that exact school district have now been detained by ICE. And just a few blocks from my home here in Richfield yesterday, ICE agent followed a school bus on the way home from school. It created enough fear for those kids that the bus driver pulled over. Teachers and vetted volunteers from the school district helped make sure that students who were clearly terrified were able to get home and be safe. And I've already mentioned the journalists. ICE continues to arrest peaceful observers. More than a dozen peaceful observers were arrested this week. Many of those folks were party to ACLU lawsuits against ICE aggression. So it's tough not to see that as anything but part of this administration's continued scheme of retribution and attempts to silence. And on that note, we continue to see violent aggression from ICE agents at every turn. They are the ones causing an escalation. Just because they haven't murdered anyone in the last 2 or 3 days does not make this okay. In Minneapolis, they punched an observer in the jaw right outside of a hospital, and he fell and injured his head. 7 agents in Minneapolis swarmed an observer's vehicle, broke their windows, detained them, and pepper sprayed a gathering crowd. In St. Louis Park, guns were drawn, including large weapons, surrounding a St. Louis Park observer who believed that they were about to die. And just days ago, in a video that folks have seen on social media, a ICE agent told an observer, "If you raise your voice, I will erase your voice." So let me ask anyone, does that sound like de-escalation to you? Clearly it does not. And to that end, I wanted to share a message to some of the Republicans and CEOs that have put out statements in the wake of Alex Preddy's murder, calling to lower the temperature or for a pause. And I do believe that some of the folks that put out those statements truly want this to end and truly want change to happen. But anyone unwilling to name that it is ICE and our federal government who is responsible for this harm, those statements mean nothing. And in fact, are worse than nothing. Because if you're choosing to make this a both sides issue, you are picking a side. And it is the wrong one, and it is actively enabling ICE to continue to terrorize our people. And so that's why it's important that we continue to raise up these stories and have each other's backs, have our neighbors' backs, because the only way that we can de-escalate is to say loud and clear that it's time for ICE to get out of Minnesota. So that is the message I wanted to share on behalf of my colleagues and folks all across the state that continue to experience the harm of ICE agents in our communities.
Thank you so much, Representative. I think it's worth noting that it hasn't even been a week since Alex Preddy was publicly executed extrajudicially. Next, we will go to Council President Elliott Payne to give an update from the City Council.
Thank you, Councilmember Chowdhury. We've heard all of the reports that Mayor Frey has met with Tom Homan. He was in DC for the National Mayors Conference, and he's even had audience with President Trump, at least by phone, making the same consistent demand that we need ICE out of Minneapolis and ICE out of Minnesota, and that we are going to continue being a welcoming city. I support those efforts. And we are at a critical time where we do need ICE to leave. And we also need to think structurally about the future of this lawless organization. And I'm really hoping that our federal partners can do something to hold that accountable. But I'm going to echo some of the same sentiments that Representative Howard shared, which on the ground, we're seeing talk of de-escalation in the media. We're seeing commitments to start drawing down some of these forces. But just this week, we've had the Ecuadorian consulate tried to be breached by ICE agents. Just yesterday, we saw images circulating around social media of an MPS van being encircled by an ICE agent. People actually thought that ICE was using MPS vehicle to conduct their operation. That, in fact, was ICE pinning in an MPS van. One thing that it's really important for our community to understand is that there's a lot of changing tactics, but we need to be mindful of not circulating rumors and definitely leverage your local elected leaders to share things that you see emerging so that we can verify that and so that we're not, contributing to misinformation. In that instance, that van was a legitimate MPS maintenance vehicles on the way to a job, and it got just caught up in an operation. But we're also hearing reports of ICE still utilizing park property to do staging. I heard that just this morning that they were staging at Boom Island Park. 911 was called to try to get MPD to come and get them to leave. But this is a fluid situation. And frankly, the city and our park system and our school system is struggling to keep up with the changing nature of these dynamics. I want to encourage folks that if you do see any utilization of park property for staging, to send an email notifying the parks at immigrationmprb.legal@minneapolisparks.org. That's where you can formally report those activities so that we can stay on top of that and still try to enforce those restrictions that we've put on. And as always, I am still out there every day trying to keep watch of the community. I think that has been what has been most effective in getting this federal administration to change their behavior. It's the sheer force of the residents of Minneapolis and the residents of Minnesota staying vigilant and staying resilient in the face of this invasion.
Thank you so much, Council President. From Hennepin County today, we have Director Christa Mims.
Thank you, Councilmember. Hello, everyone. I am Christa Mims, Director of Education Support Services and Broadband and Digital Inclusion for Hennepin County, and one of the leads for Hennepin County's Operation Reconnect. The county continues to coordinate an internal response to the impact of ICE in our communities. We've been assessing internal areas of need and growth opportunities to better serve residents. We continue to be in community offering direct services, including legal and workforce development supports, information sharing and resource connections for community organizations, and bolstering county resource awareness, such as our general supports like the Office of Multicultural Services that offer help for immigrants and refugees. We can connect residents to resources in their preferred language. The phone number for OMS is 612-348-2193. We also have business supports such as Elevate Hennepin that provide advisors, training, and resources to small business. That email for Elevate Hennepin is elevate@hennepin.us. Our Be at School program partners with schools, community agencies, and other areas of the county to support K-12 students. They can refer students and families to other county programs with education resources, technology, and multilingual supports. Their phone number is 612-348-6041. We also, for food and health, as shared on Monday, we have SNAP and WIC services available, as well as COPE mobile crisis response supports available. The SNAP phone number is 612-596-1300. Our WIC phone number is 612-348-6100. And the COPE phone number is 612-596-1223. Also in health, we have healthcare for the homeless, which you can reach at 612-348-5553. And our family home visiting services, who can be reached at 612-348-8687. We also have housing services available, including housing stability, which can work with residents to access shelter and solve housing issues. They can be reached at 612-204-8200. And the Tenant Resource Connection that offers eviction prevention resources, which can be reached at 612-767-9737. Also from the county, we have legal supports from our adult representation services, which provide legal help to people experiencing poverty in civil cases and an advocacy for client rights, as well as legal advice. Those can be reached at 612-348-7012. We also have county wellbeing resources that offer an array of supports, including adult protection, child protection, community resources, economic support, emergency cash assistance, and family response and stabilization services, all of which will be linked in the description or shared out. Thank you so much, Councilmember Chowdhury.
Thank you so much, Director. With that, that's our Metro Ice Out report. I want to encourage our community to continue to stay safe, stay vigilant. It's really important if you see something that is violating your constitutional rights or violating someone's constitutional rights or just doesn't feel right, and it is an injustice, to continue to report to the Attorney General's reporting portal. That is how he is bringing in the experiences of our community into the courtroom as we are trying to stop Operation Metro Surge. We encourage you to reach out to your local elected officials, your state officials, your city officials. The core of our responsibility is to represent you and to deliver constituent services. And that's why we continue to do these reports and continue to keep our community updated, because the situation just continues to evolve and it's going to take all of us. And we're going to continue to believe what we see with our own eyes. We're going to stand together and continue to say ICE out. It's been a very, very difficult last week, and we still have several days in front of us, but I just want to encourage everyone and let them know that what we are doing is keeping our community safer, and we are winning. It's just going to take some more time. And so I encourage you to get the rest and the help that you need so you can keep on stepping in and stepping out. Our next Metro Ice Out report will be on Wednesday, February 4th. I really encourage you to like, subscribe, share this with your neighbors so they can tune in. And thank you to everyone that joined today to give their updates.